Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So dinner has arrived, alhamdulillah. There's some pizza pies at the sister's side, some others at the brothers. MashaAllah, since we have a lot of brothers that are present, maybe you can start off with like, I don't know, maybe two slices per person, and then if there's extra, you can always come back for seconds, inshallah. But go ahead and help yourselves, and then we're going to go ahead, inshallah ta'ala, and resume with the Q&A part, inshallah. But go ahead and help yourselves, inshallah azza wa jal. There's also water there to drink. There's some plates, paper. Could we get you guys anything? Inshallah. So with your permission, while you're quietly getting your meals and enjoying some of the fellowship, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the communication, inshallah, we're going to go ahead and return to opening up the floor, inshallah ta'ala, once again for the Q&A. And so you guys got to forgive me that I don't have everybody's name learned. So perhaps maybe a good thing would be, and I should have said this from the beginning, if you'd like to, you can share your name just so that this way it better helps put a name to a face. But if not, that's not a problem at all, inshallah. So I know that the question that, why don't you please repeat your question, Akhuna, inshallah? Because I know that some of the other panelists had wanted to also address it, inshallah. And we ask that anybody who's going to be asking a question, just to better help the sound clarity, to just lower your mask for that purpose, because otherwise it's kind of like trying to speak like this and it's very hard. So if you can please remove your mask until your question is asked. Wa jazakumullahu khair.
Assalamu alaikum. My question was, and concern was that hookah bars. I have young kids. I have college graduated already, on going to college. They have friends and family. They are going to hookah bars, you know. And when I talk to them, I told them that that's the gateway. That's basically I talk to them. But they are saying everybody is smoking. It's halal, it's not, it's haram, don't give me a fatwa. So I'm just saying that I think this is a first step to go further beyond that hookah bars, you know. That was my concern, you know.
Okay, thank you for your question. And I wanted to follow up to Yasin's response to your question that, you know, so this discussion is more so about how we can identify and treat addiction and less focused on prevention. Prevention is incredibly important, but for the intents and purposes of this talk, we're focusing more on treatment and identifying addiction. What I will say about hookah bars being a gateway, is it a healthy thing to do? Absolutely not. I'll reserve my judgment as far as whether it's halal or haram. I'm not an expert there. But if we're talking about a gateway drug, this is something really interesting I learned during my internship a few years ago. We had an adolescent who was part of our substance abuse program, and all the adolescents were sharing kind of their story about what catapulted them into addiction. And this particular boy was Hindu, and he said that what he felt like was his gateway drug was a cheeseburger. He ate meat for the first time, kind of in hiding from his parents, and he had this like feeling of exhilaration and that he did something wrong, and that even whenever he got home, he was like, oh, I don't want my parents to smell it on me, or maybe they're going to be able to tell that I ate it, and then being able to get away with that, right? So when we're talking about what the gateway drug is, I think that kind of like what Yasin said, we're really looking at the broader depth of addiction and all the other factors that surround it, and less so about one use of a substance recreationally. Did that answer the question? Okay, thank you.
Ahbab, from the religious perspective, we all understand or should understand that Allah Ta'ala does not tell us to necessarily just not do something, but He tells us, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا. And this is in so many places throughout the Quran. Do not even go near something that is in and of itself a prohibition. Why? You know, we understand gravity, we understand attraction, we understand slipperiness. The closer you get to something, the greater the risk is that you fall into it. And so naturally, whether it be tobacco products, whether it be locations of hookah bars and who knows what. And the sad thing is that when we look at the majority of these hookah bars, it's part of the Muslims, contribution to society, right? It's very unfortunate, right? So we don't want to even go near these places, Islamically speaking. Islamically speaking. The environment, among many different things, is something that desensitizes us. So let's say, for example, we go to a particular place to watch this boxing fight, and it turns out that this is one of those sports bars. If you've never stepped into one of those places, your fear level is probably like going through the roof. But when you're able to actually step foot in and you stay there entire duration and shaitan is playing with you, he's telling you, see, you're a survivor. You went, you didn't drink, you didn't do anything haram. You see, there's nothing to worry. But that's how he desensitizes. So this aspect of desensitization, it's real for us as Muslims. And this is why it's not about just don't do a particular thing, it's don't go near it. And so whether it be a substance itself, whether it be a location, whatever it is, we want to do our best to understand that we should not go near any of these things, because you never know how you may slip and fall or be attracted to, or whatever else it may be. That's the thing, that factor that may cause you to take one more step and then another, and Allah Ta'ala forbid. No, Allah knows best.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Abdullah Sosa, and I have a question for Sister Sahar. So, what do you think about, because the society, especially here in the United States, they over stereotype Muslims as being religious, and they wouldn't do addiction or all these stuff. Do you think that in the Muslim community, especially the denial of Muslims even doing alcohol or drugs is a problem, or is it basically because do you think that the denial within the Muslim community is a problem for those who suffer or struggle with addiction? And what can we do to combat this?
Thank you so much for your question. Yes, absolutely, right? Denial of there even being a problem at all is one of the biggest problems in and of itself, because we know that addiction is prevalent in the general population just at the same rate as it is with the Muslim population. But because we don't address it, we don't talk about it, we try to sweep it under the rug. And like the Imam said earlier in his opening, that there's this fear that we're going to kind of speak it into existence, right? And astaghfirullah, we can't speak anything into existence. Only Allah can speak things into existence. So it's important to remember that denying a problem is not going to make it go away. Trying to sweep it under the rug is not going to make it go away. And I think this community is very blessed with having somebody like Imam Shpendim here, who has opened this discussion up to the community and has invited us in so that we can have an in-depth discussion and look at something that is really troubling us. So the way I think that we can combat that is to continue having these discussions and to have the courage to ask questions, to show up, and to extend an arm out to those that we see are struggling. Okay. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much. And your effort now is one of the breaking barriers about this topic. And it's a good step forward. And jazakumullahu kullu khair. I'm a licensed master social worker and an LCDC also. But I'm now speaking as a community member. For us all to understand, this is a problem, whether we like it or we don't like it, it is here. And as parents, we need to be very aware of two things. The era, which means the timing we are living, and the location. So to just ignore is not going to solve any problem for us. This is number one. Number two, this topic needs to be handled by the professional. It is not enough for the parent, for the imam, by all respect that I need to mention this. This is a professional help. This is a professional help, and even the professionals, they are a team. They are not only one single professional handle this topic, there's a team of professionals who are taking care of this. So we need to give this problem what it deserves by paying the attention that we need to it. And sometimes, I'm sorry, maybe I'm taking it too long, but sometimes we don't feel something until you are hit by it. So that is all what I have, and thank you so much again.
Jazakallah, thank you for that. Absolutely. I think it's important for our community members to speak out when they also recognize that this is something to be handled by professionals.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
If I just may say that, by the way, Ahbab, I'm not a specialist in any of this stuff. Even when it comes to non-religious things, I send it out. They have, alhamdulillah, specialists in every field. And I see myself as a facilitator. That if somebody were to come to me and say that there's a particular issue, I check to see who I can match them up to. So the point that you're making, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know this because unfortunately all too often families will come and think that as imams we can make miracles happen. That's not the case. That's not the case. But alhamdulillah, this is a wonderful beginning point. This is not the end. This is a beginning point, and hopefully inshallah ta'ala through this it can be replicated, it can be made more frequent, and inshallah ta'ala what there is of services, that it will become all the more inshallah ta'ala acceptable to our community, and inshallah ta'ala we'll see the effects of getting help all the sooner in our lives bi'idhnillahi azza wa jalla.
So the sisters have a question, but before that I'll take the two online questions we've had. And the two are very related, so I'm going to mention both. The first one is about addiction to like social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all of that. And how do you value this? And then the second one, which is the more serious, which is addiction to pornography, because that's something that the Muslim community, again, is one of those taboo topics also that people deal with, inshallah. So maybe we can combine the two questions together, inshallah.
I think there's a wider conversation about addiction in this broader sense of the word, and I don't want to invalidate, but I think that at least what I have, and I also want to say just I'm just a person. The thing that I have experience with is being a person in recovery that's part of the Muslim community, and that my views are my own. But that what we're talking about is substance use disorders. So that things like pornography addiction or social media addiction or, that kind of thing would be outside of the scope of what we're talking about.
And I will say that, whenever we're treating a substance use disorder or a process disorder, which is what those would be called, that the treatment for them is not that dissimilar. The criteria that I kind of went over earlier in the presentation also covers a lot of the diagnostic criteria you would be looking for in those other addictions. But the best way to handle that if you're dealing with it yourself is to seek out professional help. And if you are if a loved one or a friend is dealing with it, it's still going to be the same way that we're dealing with any other addiction, by trying to acknowledge and support their recovery and not support the addiction.
Anything from your side on that topic?
And just to add on, there are support groups for each individual addiction, like for specific addictions, so you can always seek those out in the community.
Okay, jazakumullah khair. So the next question or questions for Imam Shpendim from the sisters. What category of sin is addiction? Oh, how many types of addiction are there? It's kind of repetitive, but that's what kind of a sin? What category of a sin is addiction?
So I'd like to answer it in a different way. It's one thing that we look at something and say it's haram. This is not really what we're focusing on here to give you the kaba'ir in order. I had a young man, very handsome young man, come into my office a few months back. And he shocked me when he told me that he's a heavy drug user. And as he just on his own started opening up, he shocked me when he told me that he thinks the reason why he started using was because he was sexually molested by a close male relative. And that he did not know what to do, how to handle it, and one thing led to the other. It's very easy for us to look at something and say, this is haram. Yes, that's clear. But what we're trying to do here is understand, how do we help somebody who's in this situation? And I think it's a very different thing. From the first perspective, it's very easy for us to look at somebody as a sinner and say, astaghfirullah, this person has this addiction, they're doing X, Y, Z, etc. And Allah hates these things. But what you're doing is you're looking at something void of the life that the person themselves has. Imagine if that young man would have stopped at that point and just said that I have major drug issues. And he stopped there, he didn't say anything else. You tell me yourself, wouldn't you feel differently? Don't you feel differently knowing that what caused him to unfortunately take the drugs was having been sexually molested? Absolutely. How many a person is going to come forward and tell you why they're doing something haram when they're doing it? We don't think about that point. We're looking at a person at a snapshot of now, and a lot of the times we're judging him, her. But what we don't look at is what has led up to that point. And in the end, me as Imam and all of us, we want to help people. To help somebody is very different from putting a label on them. Very different from saying what you are doing is haram, that you are a harami, that you are so sinful, and everything else of the heaviness that comes with it. Because understand too, brothers and sisters, folks who are struggling with addictions in their lives, as you heard, they're also struggling with suicidal ideation. We don't want to be the person, the factor that pushes somebody over the edge. And I'm saying this to you because as Imam, anybody who comes walking through my door, I don't judge them. Brother, sister, regardless of background. Why? Because what I'm realizing in almost 50 years of my life is that I'm seeing this person for the instant of what they are before me. I have no idea all that has happened to them in their lives. And in the end, what should our goal be? Shouldn't it be that we want to reconnect people back to Rabbul Alameen, Arhamur Rahimin? Absolutely. And if we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is all forgiving, He is most merciful, and He gives everybody, even the worst of sinners, the same chances that He gives everybody else, then our job is not to really look at things from that perspective such that we want to just damn the person who's doing something. The Prophet ﷺ, he was not that person with regards to Ra'sul Munafiqeen, the chief hypocrite in Medina. He was not the person who was eager to damn him to hell. And he should be our role model. In being our role model, we should be more compassionate and understand that whoever is struggling with whatever it is, pornography, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, gambling, whatever, that they are struggling with what is considered an illness. However they got there is a different story, but it's an illness. and we want to help them. And I pray that Allah Ta'ala help us to be facilitators of help and of goodness and not the opposite. Allahumma ameen.
I had a question come in from the sisters while we were on break, so I wanted to take a minute to address that. So she was asking, what can parents or friends do to help someone that they see struggling? How do we convey to them that there is hope? Especially when they're very resistant, when somebody's in the middle of an addiction or even a mental health crisis, if they're struggling with an extreme amount of depression that robs them of any motivation to even try to get better. I think that it's really important for us to recognize the signs as it builds up and try to intervene as quickly as possible. So if you're seeing your child or a friend or loved one withdrawing, isolating, seeing a drop in academic performance, job performance, etc., to step in and ask them what's wrong, offer counseling, offer support in ways that they're able to see. But when we're also talking about our children having healthy coping skills to handle tough times that come their way, especially as preteens or teenagers and young adults, I think modeling healthy coping skills as parents is so important. The way that we communicate with our children, with our spouses, the way that we handle our own stressors models to our children how to handle their stressors. So that kind of starts really early. If somebody's in the middle of an addiction and has lost all hope and just don't want to get any help, that's really Adam's area of expertise, where you would potentially call in an interventionist to help stage and prepare the family for an intervention. And I'll pass it over to Adam to answer the rest of that.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this a little bit when I spoke, but what is an intervention? So as an interventionist, there are different types and models of interventions. I use the Love First model. Sorry. There are different types of interventions. I use the Love First model, and the Love First model of intervention is where we approach the loved one, the friend, the brother, the sister. We approach them from a place of love, right? We approach them from a place of, we love you, we care about you, and we want to give you a gift. And the gift is we found this place for you to go because we care about you and we want you to get back on track. So so you approach them with the love first and with the gift of going to treatment in order to continue the path, that they want to be on, right? Whether it's going to school, whether it's remaining married, whether it's continuing to live in your home with you, whether it's your son. And what happens if they say no, right? And then at that point, we take a different route. And that route is we stop supporting their addiction, right? So the route is if they say no, we stop supporting their addiction, you're not going to be allowed to live with us anymore. You're not going to be allowed, we're not going to pay your phone bill anymore. We're not going to pay your car note anymore. We're not going to continue to pay for school because you're flunking anyways, right? So you set up these motivators in order to motivate them to go to treatment and to accept help and to recognize that they have a problem, because addiction is a mental illness and most people that have it don't realize that they have it. So they need some type of consequences in order to recognize it. So I hope that answers the question.
I have a question myself. Let's say if you know of somebody who needs help, how expensive is treatment? And if somebody, let's say, is broke, can the treatment be done, from the state or from things like that?
So treatment, there are all different levels of treatment. There are state-funded options for somebody that doesn't have any money. The thing about state-funded options is it's more difficult to get in, right? For instance, if somebody has insurance, they can make a phone call, they could be somewhere tomorrow, they could be somewhere tonight. But if somebody doesn't have insurance and they don't have any money it might take them a few days to get in somewhere. And they have to be more diligent about getting in, because in some of these state-funded treatment centers, it's first come, first serve. So you need to be there first thing in the morning in line. And like I said, if you contact me and you need some of those resources, let me know, and I'll tell you how you know, where to go and how to go about it. Without insurance treatment, the most affordable option would be $6,000 a month. Anywhere from, I believe there's another place in Austin that's around $9,000 a month, but anywhere between $5,000 to $30,000 a month without insurance. So, but with insurance, typically most treatment is covered. That includes Medicare and Medicaid. So. Well, that's what state funded.
Were there any more questions on the sister side, perhaps? Anyone else on the brother's side? Any of our younger students or brothers, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Ooh, that's loud. Okay. I have a quick question. By the numbers, what are the different substances that are more prevalent in our community as Muslims? Like that are that our community members are addicted to, per se.
Sure. What substances are the most prevalent in our community?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we see generally is that what is happening in the general population is what's happening in the Muslim community most of the time. And again, those that research is just hard to find because there's lower levels of treatment happening in the Muslim community. There's a lot less self-reporting happening in the Muslim community. So it's hard for me to speculate on that. What I will say is that a lot of times the first line of defense is outside of the family is usually a religious scholar or an imam. So maybe the imam can speak on that to what he sees family members coming and trying to discuss with him.
So to be quite honest with you, I don't have those statistics, but what I do experience is that Muslims will come and think that their family member has magic on them or is possessed by a jinn. And they are in denial. They don't even want to take the approach to see medically whether there's mental health, whether there's an addiction, whether there's something else that's underlying. And it's very hard to, as she said, without us being honest and upfront with regards to our matters, the numbers, the statistics are something that are going to always evade us. When you look at some of the statistics that Mufti Wasim Khan had given us a few weeks back, what he showed was that in a survey he himself conducted of over 1,111 young adults from 15, I think it was, until like 25. That over half of them, drinking was something that was mentioned, alcohol. I forgot if it was about 30-something% with regards to marijuana, maybe something of drugs. So the numbers are not small. These are numbers that they should certainly be alarming for us. But on the other front, one of the things that we also perhaps don't think about is that there are people who are, quote, functional addicts. Functional addicts. I mean, just look at America. How many of these folks, they start their morning with alcohol? I'm not even talking about Muslims, I'm talking about just in general, right? From airline pilots to surgeons to you name it, to lawyers and judges. But yet they're still able to keep a job, still able to, quote, manage something of a family, so on and so forth. Well, this is also the case with our Muslims. So we have, it's meant, you know, there's a lot of layers to it. But I think that what has to happen, of what our dear brother Abdurrahim was saying, is that we've got to look at how we can build teams, how we can build these relationships across disciplines that better helps us to address what we're going through as a community, what our needs are. And this includes everything of the spiritual, the psychiatric, the medical, the psychological, the social, you name it. And only when we can work as a team like that, inshallah, hopefully can we address these concerns we have from all of these angles and be as thorough as possible. And inshallah ta'ala increase what there's going to be of success, and Allah knows best.
One more question, if you don't mind. Well, actually two more. You talked about coping mechanism, like coping skills, teaching our kids how to have coping skills. Like, I heard this word quite often, but like, even right now, when you say coping skill, I can't think of anything. Is this something that, like, some people know unconsciously how to do? Is that like a strength of character, or is this something that you learn? Like, can you also give me like a few examples?
Well, one is prayer. I think prayer is a really good coping skill. Exercise can be a good coping skill. Just getting engaged in extracurricular activities, maybe sports, right? Going to play volleyball. But for me personally, it's prayer is a very powerful coping skill, and getting engaged in, for instance, 12-step groups. I do a lot with 12-step groups.
It's simple stuff is like, instead of bottling up your feelings and not talking to anybody about it, like opening up with a friend or somebody and like processing your emotions with another person, where at the end of the conversation you feel relief from the emotion. That would be like a coping skill versus shoving it down or numbing it with substances. Yeah.
And I think that addiction in men is much higher rates than women, and I think that definitely has to do with the fact that men are kind of expected to not process their emotions and just shove things down and not talk about it, or that talking about it or being vulnerable is somehow a weakness, right? And I think we all know that talking about something that's difficult is much more courageous than shoving it down and trying to numb it with substances or whatever it might be, any kind of unhealthy habit. So taking the time to connect with somebody, going to counseling is a good way to learn more coping skills and to give you space to process those difficult emotions.
So for my last question is going to be about substance use, right? Nowadays there are many substances that people are addicted to. However, those substances, like when they first started, it's either recreational or medicinal. For example, let's say that my brother comes to me and he says that, okay, he's been having some issues with stress and anxiety, and then he's also nervous all the time at work and something like that. And he also has like headaches and stuff like that. He goes to his doctor, and then his doctor prescribes him something, right? And it may be another illness, and then his doctor prescribes him some marijuana, right? If one of my brother is in that situation, how can I identify, or how can I prevent that from leading to addiction?
So whenever we're prescribed any kind of substance, it kind of gives that idea that it's okay for me to be using this as needed, and it can be for sure. But we want to be mindful of the fact that it is an abusable substance, and if somebody has a propensity or a family history towards addiction, you can always ask your doctor to write you something that is non-abusable or doesn't have those same addictive properties. But also to kind of look for the warning signs of, am I kind of hoarding some of this medication? Am I taking it more than I'm supposed to? And looking out for those same warning signs of addiction. Yep.
Yeah. I was just going to say, if you're asking about like a friend or someone you're concerned about, I think probably the biggest indicator would, in my experience, would be if it's a really touchy subject. So like you try to have a conversation about how they're using the medication and they shut down or get angry or blow up. If it's something that's like the message you get from there is, don't go there, we're not talking about that, that's probably a pretty good sign that there's something there that's more serious than just a chemical dependency.
Jazakallah khair.
So inshallah ta'ala, I don't know if we are all done with the questions, inshallah ta'ala. Sisters, last chance, inshallah. Any questions that may be there on your side? Khairan.
I was going to ask the last one, inshallah. We'll
Sure.
end with that.
Then we'll conclude bidnillah ta'ala with this last question, inshallah, from our brother Muhammad Ali. Go ahead.
It's to Yassine, inshallah. So you touched on that, and I loved how in the beginning of your talk that you hinted at your family, because we all tend to be very judgmental, right? When I see somebody who's had an addiction problem, the shaitan, I would say, I'll blame it on the shaitan, will make me by default think that his family didn't raise him properly, that's why. So I loved how you commented on that. So in your experience, what led to what do you think is the biggest factor that pushed you towards addiction, and what other factors that you see that push, the youth towards addiction?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I do want to say one thing on that point about family shame and stuff, that I mean, like, really, I have an older sister, and I specifically didn't do anything inside the Islamic within the Muslim community of being out as a person in recovery, as a recovered methamphetamine addict, specifically because she was, like, I didn't want it to impact her. And now it's just like I care more, like, she's been married and is good now, so it's like, yeah, but that's super real. So not only that societal shame part within our community. I mean, there are as many reasons for people becoming addicted as there are people, I think if there's anything that, it's shame and guilt, I think is the biggest common, and trauma, probably. I wanted to say the one thing that as far as prevention, if this is what we're really getting at, what can we do, is acceptance, especially by the parental figures and by the family unit, the immediate family. Because that's really, it's a family, what my mother thinks of me, or what my father thinks of me, or what my brother thinks of me, or what my sister thinks of me, matters more to me than pretty much what anybody else 1,000 other people could think I'm a bum, right? And if my mom still loves me, I'm going to be okay, So that, like, I think for me, I think the biggest thing is being accepted within your family, even not accepting behaviors necessarily, but just knowing that I always have a place in their heart, that I'm not outside of the family unit, I think is the biggest thing, beyond any specific thing. Even if, I feel like I know that, like, I don't want to touch on societal things, but, like, I know that with my mom specifically, and my dad too, that, like, no matter what, like, even if I did the most horrible thing imaginable that I could think of, that they would still accept me as a human, that I'm not completely fundamentally unlovable, is the most important message. Yeah.
Last question, but we have to take.
We can't say no to him.
Assalamu alaikum. I have a question. What do alcohol and drugs lead to?
In some cases, the worst possible outcome, death, jail, prison. What else?
So alcohol and drug use can lead to dropping out of school, losing your job, not having friends or family around to support you, and then it can eventually lead to something like jail or death, health issues, legal issues. There's a lot of stuff, mental health issues. So it can be kind of a spiral downward. Yeah.
I think the best answer I can give you is to unexpected consequences. Because how old are you?
I'm 9.
9, yeah. So I never intended, there was no point where I said, oh, I'm going to become the biggest, best drug addict I can be. So it's nothing that somebody plans for. So it just is the unexpected consequences that are not good. Yeah.
And with that, ahbab, inshallah ta'ala, we come to a close. We'll end with dua, bidnillahi rabbil alameen. اللهم ربنا لك الحمد لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا Muhammad. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you accept this evening that was spent, Ya Rabbil Alameen, in your house as an act of worship. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you make the presentation beneficial of knowledge as well as in actions. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you protect us, our loved ones, and humanity as a whole from any and all addictions. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you always keep our families and our support groups of friends to truly be supportive, to be loving, to care, and to be helpful. Ya Allah, we ask you that you keep shaitan far away from us and that you keep bad people far away from us. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you instill hope in the hearts of everybody that is struggling with whatever it may be in life, addictions or other than that. Ya Allah, help us to understand that you are the source of all goodness, Ya Rabbil Alameen. And that so long as we believe in you, that we trust you, that we devote ourselves, our lives to you, that you are more powerful than everything else, and you will certainly make a way out for us and help us through our hard times. Ya Allah, we ask you, Rabbil Alameen, that you guide us, Ya Allah, and that you keep us guided, that you bless us to be role models of guidance for others until the day of judgment. Ya Allah, we ask you that you forgive us all of our sins. Ya Allah, that you erase them entirely from our registry. Ya Allah, and that you always bestow your mercy on us and that you be well pleased with us. Allahumma ameen. Wa salli Allahumma wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Wa akhiru da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. And last but not least, our dinner tonight was a donation by Brothers Pizzeria in Frisco. So if you can keep them, inshallah ta'ala, in your du'as or make a dua for them, Allah ta'ala accept it on their behalf, and as well as the IENT board and staff, and for all of you who came out to make this a most wonderful event. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.